This is Dianne Andrews in Black and White. The issues you don't want to talk about. The arts and entertainment you need to know. And now here's your host, Dianne Andrews.
Hello, I'm Dianne Andrews, your host of Dianne Andrews in Black and White. Thanks for being out in the audience, thanks for being in YouTube land, and thanks for being in television land. We appreciate your viewership, and as you know, we're in 50 parishes now out of 64 parishes. We have New Orleans on Pelican Broadcasting Network. If you go to www.dianneandrewssite.net, it lists all the channels that we're on television. And you can click to YouTube from the site, or you can go straight to youtube.com and put Dianne Andrews in Black and White in. There has been so many serious problems, almost race riots between black and white, and I guess there is a race riot in Baltimore. One of my guests here today calls it a civil war going on in America. I look at it and I look at all the couple of white policemen that have been killed, and we look at all the black youth that have been killed by police. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Are black people more apt to kill white police, and are white policemen more apt to kill black youth? But we have to look at in Baltimore, it's called the Baltimore Six. 3 of those were black policemen, 1 a black woman. So is it a black versus white? Is it a police versus black? What is really the civil war that's going on in America? And that's what we're going to debate today with 3 guests that I have. Thank you for being here, Reverend White. Thank you for being here, John Paul, and thank you for being here, Silky Slim. I'll start with Silky. I always say, people told me I didn't know Silky a year ago. I didn't know Silky, but I know Silky now. Silky's been on Dianne Andrews in Black and White probably 4 times. Silky is an ex-gangbanger. He's been to prison, but he came out and he reformed himself, and now his mission in life is to help blacks and helping the community. And he has a website, stopthekilling.com.
Stopthekillinginc.com.
Stopthekillinginc.com. Thanks for being here, Silky. I talked about in my first Walking While Black show, I talked about several youth that had been gunned down or killed or purportedly killed themselves. One was this man to my left, Reverend White's son. His name is Victor White also. This is Reverend Victor White Sr. His son was killed last year in New Iberia by policemen, we think. It is said that he killed himself. And on one of my first shows with Chief Nat and Silky, I did a demonstration. His son was patted down and put into a police car with his hands handcuffed behind his back. 20 minutes later, he was dead. And tell me, Mr. Reverend White, what did they say happened? How did he get out of the handcuffs?
Well, that's still debatable. We don't know how he got out of the handcuffs. They're saying he was still handcuffed. Actually, he was handcuffed even after he shot himself in the back, according to the report. He
shot himself in the back?
That's what they said initially. The initial report was that he shot himself in the back. 6 months later, we would get the autopsy report from their own coroner, the Iberia Parish coroner, called Ditch. It was saying he was shot in the chest.
Did you do your own private autopsy?
Yes, we did, but there was some things that were missing, so it's still ongoing. We have to wait on some issues. They have some issues with Iberia Parish coroner's office.
What's the name? Iberville Parish?
Iberia Parish.
Iberia Parish,
yes,
is where New Iberia is, right?
That's correct.
Now, Reverend White comes to us. He is a reverend in Alexandria. He has a church up there. But right now he's moving to Lake Charles because he's in substance abuse counseling. He has a master's degree in counseling. And so when your son was stopped, I read something that he probably told him who his father was because you were known in that town. Is that correct?
That's correct. Under Sid Abear, under the prior sheriff before Louis Alco, Sid Abear, I was a consultant for them. We did some program with mentoring and tutoring in the neighborhood, as well as substance abuse.
Because that's your field, substance abuse. Did your son have marijuana on him?
That's what they say, but
that's what I read.
Say. They said that when they patted him down, he was patted down twice, according to the report, that he was patted down twice. When they patted him down the first time, they said he had a small amount of marijuana on him. Patted him down the second time, they claimed it was cocaine. But he had a friend with him that night And they let the friend go and didn't let my son go.
You and I talked about that, and all of a sudden you can't find the friend. He's been missing, or he won't talk to you all?
That's correct. We were unable to.
And that was his best friend?
That was his best friend. That's correct.
And you can't find him. He disappeared right after this incident, which is really strange because they let him go.
Correct.
You know, it almost says, I'm not saying what happened, but it looks like something may have happened that they don't want to be known to the public if he was not locked up or arrested and they only arrested your son. Next to him, we have Paul Guitry, who works at the Baton Rouge Community College. He has a master's in criminal justice. He had lived in Colorado, and he got his master's at the University of Colorado. He was also a reserve sheriff, and I had to ask him, what does reserve mean? It really means a part-time sheriff. Tell us, what is your take, you've seen both sides. You've worked as a sheriff, you've worked in law enforcement in Louisiana, and you've worked, as you do now, in criminal justice, and you also volunteered at teen court here in Baton Rouge. Yes, yes, ma'am. What do you think when you hear stories like this, Paul?
Well, I mean, it seems like it's always an occurring event. You know, you hear about, you know, Mr. Reverend White's son, and you know all the other names that came after Reverend White's son, and
was Tillman's after? He was after Victor, wasn't he?
After Victor.
Out down in Houma. But that was a black policeman that shot him. He was half white, I understand, but he was black. He's married to a white lady. Because I met with Tika is her name in the Tillman. Yeah, and she told me that. In fact, I saw his picture.
I think the main thing that the public wants to know today is we want to get to the truth, and we want a little bit of transparency when it comes to police reform. They can easily cover up things, and I don't know the case of Reverend Wright's son or any of the other cases that are ongoing right now. But I think it's really indicative that, you know, we as a community come together and request from our law enforcement agencies that, you know, we need to build on reform. Body cameras are a good thing, but we need to also have the citizens more involved with the police.
Now, they've got a pilot going on here now. 100 body cameras have been purchased.
Yes, we actually went to the meeting last night at the council meeting, and it's finally going to get underway, and it's supposed to happen like in October. And C. Denise Marcel is actually going to start up a study group to kind of vet the policy.
Yeah, because she wanted to carry, I know her and some other council people wanted to carry it on to less than the pilot, but they don't know the cost, is what I heard Deputy.
That's the big
In fact,
thing.
I'm going to ask the chief to be on the show soon.
That's the big thing is actually the cost of the servers and maintaining that database.
Right, because they don't know what it'll cost. They said about $3 million is what the estimate, but they want to do the pilot first.
Exactly.
Silky, you're so involved in everything going on, and you know, out here trying to help and do everything you can. And I had to tease him. I said, Silky, you never come to the show before in a suit? And he said, oh, I got another show to do. I said, oh, so what are you telling me? That show is more important than my show. No, Silky and I are good friends. His son's even been on the show. Tell me, what do you think? Have you seen any changes in here in the state or anywhere from what we've got Baltimore going on? But again, Baltimore 6 is 3 black policemen, 1 black woman, and the one charged with the most heinous of the charges is the black driver of the ambulance with Freddie Gray.
Yes.
And then we have Charleston going on, right, where I think his name was Slegler, the officer, shot the black man in the back, Walter Scott, because Walter ran because he owed $18,000 in child support. That's why he ran out of the car. And he tried to say, the officer did, who is in jail now. Now, that's one they did. They indicted him, and he's in prison. In fact, I understand he and Dylan Roof, the one who killed the black people in the church, the hate crime, are in cells next to each other. That's where they deserve to be. They can talk about well, no, it may make it worse. If they break out, they'll probably kill more people because Dylan's only 21. And then in Shreveport, we just had the killing of the policeman from the, I think, the young man who was convicted. I think he was running away from a murder. He's been charged with murder. He had killed a black man, I think.
Wait, I think he was charged with attempted murder on
attempted. I said with murder.
Incident. Yeah, he had actually been charged with attempted murder. But there's a lot of things that's going on across America, and when you look at the atmosphere and what's happening is that we are definitely into a war already, whether we want to accept that or not. We have seen a very strong, courageous movement with Black Lives Matter, and we have seen...
Silky, I call it Black and White Lives Matter, and Mexican lives, brown lives. You don't think so?
I would definitely agree to that, but at the same time, when you start a movement, you can't water that movement down and say all lives matter. If all lives matter, then he would know why his son is dead. If all lives matter, then Walter Scott wouldn't have been shot down like a dog in the streets. So you can't get offensive when we say that Black Lives Matter. Now, the biggest thing about Black Lives Mattering is that it has to start mattering to black people first, because if it don't matter to black people, it shouldn't matter to anybody else.
Don't you think that's part of the problem? We have 7,500 blacks who are killed every year by blacks.
Well, when you look at that, that's a problem. That's a civil war within the community. So we should work to solve that problem. But we can't give other people a warrant to go out and kill blacks just because blacks are killing themselves. We have to look at this properly. So when you start trying to bring this down and break this down properly, we have to get to the root of it. And yes, we have a civil war going amongst ourselves, but that doesn't justify someone that's paid to go after that war to go out and kill them either.
It justifies it, but if we stop, let me tell you, would you be a policeman in the black area? What's the roughest area?
Yeah, of course I would. If I was able to. Matter of fact, I am a policeman in the black area by doing what I do right now.
But
and
do you
I take
carry
on the
a
same
gun?
type. I don't have to.
Okay.
I don't have to carry a gun, and that shows that there shouldn't be as much lethal force being used that is being used. Because if I could go out there and fight this without a gun, then how can they have to use so much lethal force out there? I'm out there with the same criminals in any black community. I don't have no limitations on where I think I could go. I go where I want to go. Because I'm not the type of hypocrite that say that God has called me for a mission and then I'm afraid to go out there on that mission. When I say the master sent me, then I carry a mastermind into what I'm doing. So when I walk into that area, I don't walk into that area with fear. I walk into that area, how you doing, young man?
But as a human being and a child of God, you do believe all lives matter. I'm just saying, I'm not talking about a movement.
All lives should matter.
Right.
All lives should matter.
That's
all
not opposite to the Black Lives Matter movement. But the Memphis policeman,
what I'm saying is that what we see is we see an attack on the movement. That's what we're seeing when you say, well, all lives matter. It's an attack on the movement.
See, I don't see it that way.
But that's the only way to see it. Because if all lives matter, you would have to ask yourself this.
Okay.
If all lives always matter, how come it wasn't brought up before Black Lives Matter came out? It wasn't a big issue then because no one was concerned about life. I have been on All Lives Matter with Stop the Killing because that's what it's about. Stop the killing, period.
For everybody, right?
Stop the killing. Yeah, not just stop the killing of black people. Stop the killing, period. But when you start hearing Black Lives Matter, then you got somebody else coming up on another side saying, well, all lives matter. Yeah, all lives matter.
But if I'm a white person, hold on, Silky, as a white person, if you hear some people say Black Lives Matter, like Governor O'Malley was speaking to a black caucus or a mixed caucus, and he was booed off when he said Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. And blacks booed him off the stage. You're the ex-governor of Maryland. What do you think of that?
For me, I wouldn't look at it the same way as O'Malley did. I look at it from the systemic injustice against the black community by the government and the criminal justice system. And so I think that when you hear I'm in agreement with Silky. I mean, when you come to all lives matter, yeah, they matter. Blue lives matter, I get that. But when it comes to Black Lives Matter, that has a different meaning for me, even as a white man, because of the knowledge that I've gained over the years in terms of how the criminal justice system... Because of the Michael Brown and the Eric Garner, which they just were awarded $5.9 million, so they admitted that the chokehold was illegal and he died from the chokehold in New York.
We always knew the chokehold was illegal. And that's another thing about us fighting. I commend, and I have been at the table with C. Denise Marcel from day one about the body cameras here in Baton Rouge Parish. But when you look at the case of Eric Garner, where you have the video clearly showing someone murdering someone, and you still can't even get an indictment. You can't get an indictment, then that's when you have to talk about what Black lives have to matter.
Calm down a little, Silky. Now, didn't the Department of Justice also go in there? Didn't Eric Holden go in there and do an investigation on him?
Yes.
They went into Ferguson too.
No charges.
Right, no charges.
So that's why I'm saying we can't weaken the Black Lives Matter movement, but at the same time, Black lives have to matter to black people. That point has to be brought across first.
That's right.
Because if it don't matter to black people, then it shouldn't matter to anybody else. And what we see now is we see
what's the plan in the Black Lives Matter movement?
It's plain and simple. You got to do what I did. Put your gun down. You got to put your gun down. You got to stop killing each other. You have to respect each other as human beings, and we have to get back to where we have deviated from, and that's with God. Until we do that, we ain't going to win.
Well, I totally agree, but the thing is, as Sigel was saying, we don't see a lot of ministers out there beating the pavement.
That's right.
And, you know, we need to come from behind our ivory towers and get out there and be a part of it, because, you know, it has taken place.
Do you think we've forgotten as we've moved up in status, social economic status? No, I'm talking Reverend White.
Okay.
Right? Do you think we have forgotten, being a reverend, you're around a lot of ministers, black ministers, and as you call it, their ivory tower?
Oh, yes.
So we need to come down and get back into the community.
Right, because a lot of ministers, the reverend pastors, preachers, they're focusing more on driving BMW, Mercedes, and things like that, building their own homes, building big churches and all that, and then so therefore we're taking from the community. We're not giving back. You know, back in the day, we
But
were
any more
builder.
than ministers, but I agree with you. The number one focus, a prominent person in the black communities was usually the minister.
Correct.
And he controlled a lot of the people, and we're not going back. I've asked a couple of ministers, why don't you go back, you know, have night basketball, or some friends of mine do that in Atlanta, in the black areas, and they don't want to do that.
No, you know, a lot of people in the church now, we used to have church at night. You remember, we used to go to church all day, all night. Well, now they're saying they're afraid to...
You're a Baptist minister,
yes,
right, Reverend White?
That's correct. That's correct. And yet and still, but I associate with all. You know,
right.
But what we see now is that you don't even have black churches that have night services anymore, because of the fact that you got parishioners saying, congregants saying, you know, I'm afraid to leave my home open. So what we do a feeding program.
In the black community, afraid to leave because of the black crime in the black community.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. They're afraid to leave, you know. But yet and still, but if the churches will go back in those same communities and put some of the money that we're getting from them, you know, so some of that money back in the community, then we'll see a lot of those things de-escalate.
And another thing that happens with the church now is that once you become an active 501, active 501c3, then you can't get out and do the type of community work that you used to do, because you can't put your face onto an agenda once you become a 501c3. So their hands are cuffed, and that's where they have to really go to the scripture where Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is his, and unto him Christ what is his. Because once you take the government money and then the government tell you what you could do, then you can't get out there and say, hey, this is wrong, you got to shut your mouth up now.
But first they need to decide if they're going to take this money.
Oh, but they take it. You know why they take it? Because they see the mega church. Oh, we want a big church. So now you got to get that faith-based. You got to get that faith-based initiative money. And once you accept that faith-based initiative money, then you can't go out there and say it's wrong that a police officer has killed someone, because that's the same government that's giving you that money. That's the same government that's giving you the money to say, here, go out there and fight. But isn't that demon from some of the ministers?
Oh,
yes, it is. And that's why when he talk about the ivory tower, we see more pimps in the pulpit today than we see preachers. We see more individuals that's after the dollar because it's so lucrative, instead of bringing the word of Jesus. I tell people all the time, I say, I know Jesus. And one thing that I found out about Jesus is that it's more money in talking to him than it is walking him. You see what I'm saying? So you hear a lot of people talking Jesus, but you don't see many of them walking Jesus. So they would be out there in the streets.
Back to the question, do black lives really matter to some of the people we're talking about?
Oh, man. Unfortunately, it goes right back to what I told you at first. Black lives have to matter to black people first.
And I'm asking you, do they? Yes,
they go to the black preacher, too. The black preacher,
answer me, Silky, yes or no?
Do it matter?
As a whole. Does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter right now. Hell no, it doesn't matter right now, because if it did, we would be out there stopping it. If someone kills someone in the white community, you see that community come together and they make a change on that. When you see a murder in Beauregard Town, you see the whole community gather together on Channel 9, Channel 2. Oh, we're not going to have this anymore. When you see it in the black community, it's shh. Stop snitching. So we can't have that stop snitching mentality if we want change in the black community.
And you're out there teaching, don't stop snitching.
Oh, no, I'm not out there teaching stop snitching. I'm out there telling you, if you see somebody take somebody's damn life and you say you walking with Christ, believe that Christ is walking with you, and you put his ass in jail.
And that's what I'm saying. You out there preaching for them to stop the no snitching.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
In the same way, what Silke saying, that the thing is, and I tell people, you know, they could say snitching or rat and eat cheese. I tell them,
where did that come from? When did we start getting so into that? Just the young generation?
It's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. When the Bible say that the truth will set you free, then Satan has to come along and make it shameful for to tell the truth. So you got individuals that's agents of Satan. That's what it is right now. We have one wise Satan and many dumb devils out there. So these dumb devils are being fed that word about it's wrong to do what's right. So now we live in a devilish lifestyle, and we have become like beasts. And when you look at that, beast is one that has lost the knowledge knowledge of self or has never been given the knowledge of self, and that's what we got to give these individuals, the knowledge of self, so that they can raise up out of the condition that
Where
they're
do
in.
you think it starts, Reverend White? How do you start getting the preachers out of the ivory towers? How do you get into the community and have them start telling?
You got to call them out. And one thing about it, and Reverend White know that, and Paul know that,
put them on blast.
You got to call them out.
You got to let them know that, look, you're getting all this money here. The bottom line is that you're still getting money from the community. Put it back in the community. As Slim was saying, the thing that I see more prevalent than anything now is that we as preachers, we as pastors and teachers, we're supposed to be out there teaching. We should be demonstrating. We should be the one demonstrating, educating, motivating our young people to show that, guess what, being what I am, right, is not who I am. See, and that's the thing, we got to start checking that.
So the buck stops here, which is part of the problem in the black community.
And me and Reverend White has been working together ever since this has happened to his son.
Yes.
I've helped them take their thing from a local level to a national level, but they still have pastors right now that will go to Reverend White and say, I can't believe that you're working with Silky Slim. Don't you know he's at war with pastors? And I tell people all the time, that's the biggest lie that's ever been started.
Don't you know he's what?
At war with pastors. I've never been at war with pastors, but ever since I came out of hell, I've been at war with Satan. It is not my fault that he's hiding in so many of these so-called pastors. So you have to expose them, and you see, once you start exposing them, that's when they start coming out trying to be against you the same way that they did Jesus. So that's why I keep the truth, and I have to walk a truthful lifestyle so that they can't say, well, we seen him on TV talking one thing, and now he's out there on the corner.
So many of the black pastors
don't
like you. I didn't know this. Okay.
It's the same way if Jesus was to come right now. Many of the world would not like Jesus right now, because Jesus have to come with something that upsets this world that we're in.
The same way he's coming from is that they'll tell me things like,
well, you lost a son. I don't think anybody has a right to tell you anything.
They still will come and tell me that when they see me out here marching in the limelight, so-called limelight. I'm just not a limelight. The thing is, I was fighting.
With you?
I was fighting the same fight we're fighting now, but when it became my son become a part of the equation, it takes it to a different level.
Right.
That I didn't stop fighting. It's just now I'm more into the light of it because
let me ask you,
my son.
Alexander, did any of the black ministers or New Iberia come together with you and try to say we need to do this, 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 and this to find out what really happened to your son?
No, like I said, my pastor, we got one in New Iberia, but all of them, I'll tell you this, all of them will get on the phone and conversate with you 100%. I said, well, okay, well, you know what, we got a protest in the rally.
Yeah, let's
we
march.
Got a march coming up there, one show up. Yeah. Same thing we called for Louis Alco resignation of him.
Who is he?
With the sheriff. Iberia Parish Sheriff Department said it'd be a cold day in hell before he resigned. But when we went to the church, only 1-2 of the pastors showed up.
So are we afraid of violence, or we're afraid of losing our status and afraid of losing money, or both?
They're afraid of
the ministers.
I don't think they're not about their life, because the thing about it, I give my life for Christ, and my life is not important.
Sometimes these other ministers who
they're
sold out, basically,
right,
is what
that's
you're
correct.
saying.
And they're so afraid because the bottom line, the politicians who paying them, not just the government, it's the politicians. Some of them taking their money, so you can't take their money and then on the other hand come out against them. Because they'll tell me stuff like
marching in the Black Lives Matter movement, but it really doesn't mean anything when they march. We're going to come back with this very emotional conversation about Black Lives Matter. Come on back to Dianne Andrews in Black and White.
Order your copies now of Dianne Andrews' latest books, Third Man Out, a suspenseful mystery by Dianne Andrews, and Gumbo for the Heart, 25 stories of faith, hope, and charity, both available now on Amazon.com.
To say the least, this is a very heated debate, but we're trying to get to the bottom of how do we make Black Lives Matter to black people in power who are getting 501c3s and building bookstores and retail shops and grocery stores on the church, because now it's a charitable organization. It's deemed as a 501c3. Silky, have you seen this problem in Baton Rouge from most ministers here?
I've seen it nationwide. I travel nationwide, and I see it everywhere I go. Church has definitely become a business, and a lot of pastors want to take the responsibility that they have off of them by saying that it starts at home. Well, I look at that and I say, well, if the parent in the home or the individual in the home hasn't been taught, then it's impossible for them to teach what needs to be taught. So a preacher's responsibility is to teach individuals the word.
Right.
That's right, and feed them. And I tell people all the time, I say, if you find yourself in a house, when you light up a barbecue grill and you put all the coals together so that they can all stay lit together, if you find yourself separated away from those coals, then you need to be out of that house. You need to be somewhere where you're constantly being fed, because even the books say, woe to the shepherd that feeds himself and not the flock. And
you tried to do some marches in Alexandria and asked ministers in New Iberia, and one showed up to help protest about correct. Your son's death. Is that correct?
That's correct. And each time we do organize. And right now we're meeting in the Minor Temple in Lafayette. That's what a steering committee. And so again, and there's very few ministers or pastors or preachers that come together, even evangelists. So therefore, what we're seeing is the same thing. You know, they're looking for, and with me, standing out in the front and saying that, you know, I love the Lord loved me. That's one thing. But if I cannot be out in the front, because that's where we're supposed to do the work. The work is out there in the heads of the byways, highways, not just in one area, but we're talking, as Silke said, nationwide, not just in Louisiana. We need to set an example for Louisiana, Arkansas.
But don't we have to start somewhere?
Yes, ma'am. Well, it says charity begins at home, spreads abroad. So therefore, we need to make the connection in Louisiana. We need to make that connection, and that's why we was having a protest, a national protest, in October the 17th in New Iberia. But then when those individuals leave, we need to have an agenda. So we're putting an agenda together to say we're going to start at home.
So is there anything that I can do with the show here to help you all with the mission? Is there somebody I can invite that will come?
I'm going to tell you, like I told Bishop T.D. Jakes when I was on his show, I hate when people say, what can I do? Anything you do is better than what you have been doing.
No, I'm asking if there's anybody I can invite who will come.
Well, you're already doing it. You're already doing it. You're already doing it. I mean, you can't drag them in and try to change them.
No, is there a name you know that may come and that would help other ministers to think a different way?
Well, my thing is that you're already doing it, so when they see this, they're already aware of what they need to be doing. So we can't beat them over the head, and we're not going to change them all. Think about it. Jesus didn't get everybody. If Jesus had got everybody,
we got 1%.
If Jesus had got everybody, nobody wouldn't have been there to nail him to the cross.
But Silke, we got 1%. Let's hurry up.
I'm looking at your show on YouTube. They know how to contact you. Everything's sitting there. They can go on your website.
They know how to come out and defend themselves. We shouldn't be able to call them all. Right?
That's why I'd like to have a few names to invite. You didn't say it wouldn't come.
Oh, the names they invite: Raymond Johnson, Jetson. All of the pastors that's out there in Baton Rouge, you need to get in the streets where you're supposed to be at. They already know, because on my show, I call them out by name. I just respect your show. But you got where people ain't got no faith at. You got everybody needs hope. You got all these churches out there that need to be in the streets, get in the streets where you're supposed to be at, do what Jesus was doing, and just stop talking about.
Let me tell you, I have no problem with what Silke's saying, because the only way to fix this problem is to be real. And as long as this is going on, we are going to keep killing policemen, some of them unfounded, and we're going to keep our boys getting killed.
Yes.
Until the people are called out, I don't think it's going to make any difference over what you're saying. He's done it before. But we're going to close this. Dianne Andrews in black and white, but if any of these ministers would like to come and talk to Silke, talk to Reverend White, talk to Paul, we're willing to come and hear your side and what your plan is to help Black Lives Matter. Thanks very much, Dianne Andrews in black and white.